Hi, I'm Caitlin Hollar, and I did my presentation over spelling instruction. Before we get started with the instructional practices, I just wanted to talk about the value of spelling that our society holds. In a survey that was conducted about 12 years ago by a teacher research group, it was found that parents highly prioritize spelling in their child's education. Of the 124 people who responded to how important do you feel spelling is, 77% selected 5, extremely important. 16 selected 4, and 8% selected 3, that was labeled important. No one circled 1 or 2, the choices from the not important side of the continuum. As well, it's been found that society as a whole values correct spelling. After conducting several case studies, Jan Turbill found these values are reflected in the attitudes and perceptions we have of ourselves as spellers. And Frank Smith notes that spelling is conspicuous and probably the only aspect of writing that most people feel competent to pass judgment on, so errors are treated as antisocial behavior. Both in 2001 and in 2007, teachers were surveyed on their concerns and perspectives about spelling instruction. It was found that spelling remains predominantly in a traditional methodology: pre-test, memorize words, post-test, and these tests were done with the use of a class spelling list, all the students receiving the same words. Some teachers mentioned that they believe that spelling is an innate ability. Also, 73% of the teachers responded that they felt spelling was not adequately addressed in the elementary curriculum. They said they were unhappy with the methods, but were unsure how to provide better instruction. One teacher noted that she brought cookies for well-performing students in order to encourage earning an A on the spelling test. This perception was attributed to factors such as lack of emphasis on spelling instruction, lowered expectations for correct spelling, the lack of phonics instruction in the lower grades, the fact that teachers had no directives or curricular guidelines, the lack of resources, and the lack of time in the school day. Another teacher responding to the 2007 survey responded that there aren't really any rules set in stone as to how words are spelled. Students with poor memories have difficulty memorizing words that don't fall into a specific spelling category. I don't know how to address the problem. 50% of the teachers surveyed held a master's degree or beyond. So we're left to wonder if these teachers were given any sort of orthographic background in their coursework. Another prevalent concern among teachers was the lack of correct spelling in student writing, even when the students had correctly spelled the word when tested. Mary Jo Fresh cites an explanation from Phillips and Soltis in their 1998 study of the philosophies of education reformer John Dewey. They say, unless the learner has personally struggled with an issue, the information was likely to be committed to memory in a rather lifeless or mechanical way. Dewey called this static cold storage knowledge, and he reasserted that unless the student had the opportunity to use the information in problem solving and action, that it was sterile. When we apply this to spelling, we see that we need to find ways for students to struggle and problem solve with the patterns and rules of our language in order for the information to be more than static cold storage knowledge. In a 2001 article by Francine Johnston, 3 spelling perspectives are recognized. The first one is rote visual memory, and these words are chosen for study just by how frequently they occur. She commented that the perspective that spelling is a matter of rote visual memory is based upon the belief that English orthography is irregular and each word stands alone as a memory task. In a few slides, we'll discuss the regularity of the English language. Another perspective was the generalization. This recognizes that there's an underlying logic to the English language, grouping words for study by similar sounds and orthographic patterns. Last, there's a developmental perspective. These words are chosen to study on an individual basis, determined by the student's developmental word knowledge. In an argument against rote visual memory as a spelling instructional method, Henderson explains that those who set out to remember every letter of every word will never make it. Those who try to spell by sound alone will be defeated. Those who learn to walk through words with sensible expectations, noting sound patterns and meaningful relationships, will know what to remember and will learn how to spell English. Now that we have discussed the value of spelling, the current practices and concerns, as well as recognized spelling perspectives, we're left to wonder if there is practicality in transforming our spelling instruction from traditional memorization methods to a combination of the generalization and developmental spelling perspectives in order to provide students meaningful spelling instruction. Before talking about how spelling can be taught using this perspective, it's important that we address the common fallacy that the English language is irregular. Nearly 50% of English words are predictable, based on sound-letter correspondences that can be taught. Another 4 are predictable except for one sound. After considering word origin and word meaning, only 4% of words are irregular. In conclusion, we see that most English word spellings can be explained. The English language follows predictable rules that can be taught and effectively used by students. As noted earlier in the surveys, we saw that predominantly memorization was the method of spelling instruction. So in order to move into a method of instruction that values the regularity of the English language, we really need to reconceptualize spelling instruction. Templeton notes that although occasionally frustrating, spelling is logical, learnable, and critical to reading as well as to writing. But the most important thing is it makes sense. In the article, How Words Cast Their Spell, written by Dr. Joshi and colleagues, they point out 3 types of information that are most helpful in making spelling predictable. The first is word origin and history. For example, Greek words tend to be long and scientific. As well, in Greek words, the k sound is represented with the letter ch. For example, chemistry. Knowing these types of rules of word origin and history will help make spelling predictable. Also, syllable patterns and meaningful parts of words. For example, knowing the difference between open and closed syllables can indicate whether a vowel is short or long. Meaningful parts of words such as prefixes, suffixes, and roots offer great supports in spelling. Lastly, letter patterns. For example, there are 6 letters that rarely or never double: V, Y, X, J, K, and H. Knowing this simple rule will prevent students from making this mistake. Although we know that the English language is regular and bound by rules, it's still difficult to imagine the instructional sequence that one would follow to introduce these rules to children. The underlying goal here is that learners begin with the expectation that spelling represents sound, and they grow toward the understanding that spelling also represents meaning. Varying sequences exist for introducing letter patterns according to the spelling programs. The following slides loosely give an idea for how the lessons could be sequenced, as well as indicators for what that might look like. At the kindergarten level, we're looking at basic literacy foundations. In the kindergarten stage, we want to develop phonemic awareness. We want to develop letter name knowledge as well as letter sound knowledge. One instructional method for doing all this would be through interactive writing each day. The teacher could model correct spelling via interactive writing. The teacher will write a sentence with the input of the students as to which word she should write, and then have the students help determine how the word should be spelled. Of course, this is a great opportunity for the teacher to model how to sound out a word, how to form the letters, and how to apply the one-to-one correspondence knowledge. In first grade, we move deeper into spelling as we expect students to learn to spell one-syllable words with one-to-one correspondence, such as the short vowels and the sounds b and d, g, h, l, m, n, p, and t. Simple letter patterns such as the floss rule can also be introduced at this level. The floss rule helps students remember that F, L, and S will be doubled when in the final position after a short vowel. In second grade, we go even deeper by introducing more complex Anglo-Saxon letter patterns. These patterns have more variables. For example, when the k sound after a short vowel in the final position of a one-syllable word occurs, it is spelled CK. For example, the word back. We also want to teach the children communal inflectional endings such as ing and ed, and talk about how they change the meaning of the word. As well, when these are introduced, we start getting into doubling and dropping letters. For example, when we change run to running, the N doubles. In third grade, we start teaching multisyllabic words. We also teach the unstressed vowel schwa, as in sofa. Also teach more common prefixes and suffixes and more complicated letter patterns, such as using C for the k sound in the final position of words with more than one syllable. For example, public. In fourth grade, we move on to Latin-based prefixes, suffixes, and roots, as well as introduce the meaningful parts of words, morphemes. In an article from 2006, Nunes and colleagues suggest that some of the most important correspondences between spoken and written language are at the level of the morpheme. The system of morphemes, therefore, is a powerful resource for those learning literacy. In fifth grade, we introduce the Greek combining forms, and children will spell words with meaningful word parts. For example, photo, as in photography, or phono, as in symphony. Beyond fifth grade, discoveries of new hidden patterns and interesting detail of the English language should be a part of each day. Although the previous slides just briefly covered what will be covered in each grade level, we can see that the task of teaching spelling is not an easy one. So word study was created as an instructional approach to help integrate spelling instruction in a hands-on way. The approach involves hands-on activities, sometimes known as word work, that allow the students to explore the layers of English orthography. The primary goal of word study is to support students' development of a working knowledge of the orthography, knowledge that the students can apply as they're reading and writing. The word study approach is teacher-directed but student-centered. The word study approach can be used at all grade levels. As I just mentioned, the word study approach is student-centered. One way of doing this is through constant assessment of the students to see where they stand and then individualize the spelling instruction for their needs. This on this slide is the primary spelling inventory, and it's an assessment tool used for identifying the developmental word knowledge of students. It's just an example of an assessment that can be used for the purpose of assessing the word knowledge. The results reveal what the student knows about orthography by determining if they're at the alphabetic principle stage, letter pattern stage, within word stage, or the suffixes and prefixes stage. I've provided a link here to an in-depth description of how the word study approach is used in a third grade classroom. The video is about 10 minutes long. The basis of successful spelling instruction emphasizes the rules and regularities. It's well sequenced to build from the basics and move up. As well, it's guided by assessment, so we individualize the instruction for each student at their word knowledge level. Even the brief overview of spelling instruction can look intimidating, as there is certainly much to be learned and to be taught. So I felt that it was important to include these guiding notes that I read through my research. English spelling cannot be learned in a short time. Rather, its mastery parallels the acquisition of an adult vocabulary. Also, the idea is to flexibly insert these important strategies into everyday instruction. It's clear that teaching spelling is not an easy task. The primary spelling by patterns is a spelling program designed for spelling instruction at the kindergarten through third grade levels. The program includes explicit, carefully sequenced lessons written by literacy expert Louisa Moats and first and second grade teacher Ellen Javernick. The program includes teacher guides, student worksheets, parent handouts, and reproducibles. On this slide, I've included the outline for Lesson 1. You can see that the goal is that students will recognize vowels as well as consonants, not vowels. You can see that it spans over 4 days, and each one is planned with multiple activities. This research-based program is one of the best ways for teachers to easily and effectively implement effective spelling instruction. Dr. Moats has also written a program for the 4th and 5th grade level, and it's called Spellography. Thank you for watching and listening to my presentation. I hope that it's left you slightly more informed about spelling instruction. I look forward to your questions and comments.